let's pivot to far more sobering topics, unfortunately. The COVID situation in the NFL getting not any better. We've got 75, according to Shefty, who have been put on the COVID-19 reserve list for testing positive. These names you see there are just the players who landed on COVID reserve for testing positive on Monday.
Jeez.
Tuesday, Chris Jones, Chiefs defensive tackle.
Oh.
He's most likely a guy we're not going to see on Thursday night when the Chargers host the Chiefs. You've got 8 in all Browns who landed on COVID reserve yesterday. The Browns and the Rams, and I think other teams, are in the intense protocols and the extra testing and really trying to get this thing under control. We're seeing multiple outbreaks at the same time, and this isn't good. There isn't any one team that is currently teetering toward kind of that critical mass of what are we going to do. Now, the Browns play the Raiders on Saturday this week, so they're really up against it. But, Chris, at some point the NFL is going to have to resolve this question that I don't know the answer to. Between 11 and 40, what's the minimum number of players that a team can be expected to suit up and play with? 46 is the game day minimum. 47 now. You can go with 48 if you have an 8th offensive lineman. So, you've had situations in the past. I think Coach Dungy's talked about this. One game with the Colts, he had so many injuries back when it was 46 or 47. I think it was 46 at the time. He didn't have enough healthy players, and you just got to suit up who you can.
Right.
How many below 45, 40, 35? Where's the magic number where the NFL says it's not safe to have that number of players available to play in a game? And I think the NFL does not want to find that out the hard way.
No, definitely not. I guess, hey, there's got to be a certain number, right, where they look at and go, okay, this isn't good. I think the other thing that maybe plays into that too is just, what positions are going to be decimated or unavailable. That's something I think that also would probably play in a fact of this, as far as, hey, we have 40 players. Right, but we're missing our whole offensive line, and that's like, what are we going to do? That's where you get, I think, into a little bit of what you're saying about the protection of players. We're talking about the era of protecting quarterbacks. You can't even touch anybody with a fingernail as you walk by them anymore, let alone now we're not going to let the whole offensive line, the whole offensive line's not going to play, and you can barely scrap together an offensive line through the practice squad and whatever guys on the streets at this time. I mean, again, that to me would probably be the nail in the coffin, is when you got a certain position that gets decimated, along with the number being somewhat low too. I would think that would get the attention of 345 Park and go, wait, this is not only a competitive disadvantage, which I don't think they're totally care about, but this is dangerous for the players if we don't have, all 5 starting offensive linemen for the Cleveland Browns, and 2 of their backups are also on the COVID list. Oh, no, now we only have 2 or 3 to play, and we're going to have to get strangers to tape this thing together. That would be the time I think the NFL has to step in.
There was a thought last year heading into the season that the NFL would actually consider that game by game, case by case. If a team doesn't have enough offensive linemen, are we going to allow them to not play in this game? Are we going to postpone it, delay it? There was much greater willingness entering the season to consider moving pieces around on the chessboard of the 17-week season than there ultimately became. I think they realized once you start down that path, how do you ensure equity and fairness and consistency? And they just got to the point where they recognized we've got 69 total players that are available, 53 on the roster, 16 on the practice squad. Any number of practice squad players can be called up to replace players who are COVID positive up to an hour and a half before kickoff. You've got maximum roster flexibility. It's up to you to make sure you have enough players available. It's up to you to make sure that you're making sure your players are doing smart things like, what we saw in Denver last year, where there was the report that the quarterbacks all took off their tracking devices and put them in separate corners of the room so they could huddle together and watch film, and they all got knocked out of the same game. And they had to go with, was it Kendall Hinton? Was that the guy, the non-quarterback who had to play quarterback against the Saints? So the NFL just doesn't care if you haven't planned your roster to have enough guys at any given position. The question is, how few players are too few. Like if you have to start going Troy Brown playing defense on a regular basis, like we've seen Bill Belichick do that from time to time because of shortages. But if you have to have guys regularly going both ways, if you're down near to the point where you only have 25 guys, it hasn't gotten that bad yet, and I don't think it will. But that's the absolute minimum. I don't know what the absolute minimum is, but the NFL has to have had these conversations.
They had to have.
And Chris, they're having an ownership meeting today, so
yeah,
it's an ideal time for them to really take a step back and ask themselves what they're doing and how they're going to ensure that all these games are going to be played as scheduled in a way that has competitive integrity. I don't like the idea that there's this vague possibility, although what can you do about it, that a high-profile player is going to be knocked out of a significant game a couple of hours before kickoff.
No, I know. Mike, I feel like it's we almost got to go back into like lockdown mode as far as the NFL is concerned a little bit, or get back to maybe, some of the procedures that were taken when it was, early on last year and it was full-fledged COVID and we didn't know what to expect, right? When's that date that hits where we go to the different level of testing and everybody for everybody? That's coming up, right? We didn't pass that already, did we? As far as the NFL.
It was Thanksgiving week. They had enhanced protocols because they understood that people were going to have family in town, et cetera. But you're right. Look, the protocol,
they need to keep that going, right? Go ahead.
For vaccinated players, the protocol for vaccinated players, which was aimed at getting a maximum number of players to choose to get the jabs, that has logical flaws in it. It always has.
Yeah.
Originally, they were going to test those players once every 2 weeks. Now they test them once a week. So for a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., who played Monday night and tested positive on Tuesday, and I don't know what time of the day he tested positive, but you're not going to convince me he wasn't positive during the game.
Sure.
When T.J. Watt tested positive on Monday,
right,
and the virus was out of his system on Friday because he had two negatives, one Friday, one Saturday, and was able to play against the Ravens in Week 13.
Yeah.
You can't tell me he wasn't positive. He may have been symptomatic the day before against the Bengals, but he just dealt with it.
Yeah, right, right.
If a player doesn't self-report symptoms, unless he is clearly in the throes of some sort of distress due to the symptoms of the virus, I don't think teams have hall monitors who are taking temperature. And did you sniffle? Was that a sniffle?
Right.
Did I hear? Are you having upper respiratory symptoms that you're not sharing with us? They're just not wired to do that.
No.
So yeah, TJ. Players are playing while they're positive, and this gets back to the point that I've been making that at some point they just have to say, if you're asymptomatic and you're positive, we're not going to keep you from playing.
Maybe.
Because players are already playing.
Yeah.
Who are positive.
And we see.
Who've been vaccinated.
Right. We'll see. Again, we have enough evidence. Like, I was looking at some of the comments under one of your articles yesterday on Pro Football Talk, and people still.
That's your first mistake.
Well, I know it is a mistake, but people still don't understand that, like, they think the virus is being passed on the field, and I want to be like, well, it's not. It's not. Again, we have plenty of evidence to know that outside and open doors, open air, whatever, it's very unlikely. It just doesn't happen. And again, this is going to prove it, because we're going to see, like, I'll be surprised if we see anybody on Arizona. Let's see if they get an outbreak, or anybody who, Cleveland last weekend against Baltimore. We haven't had anybody test positive there yet. So I want to tell, like, some of those people, like, get a clue, read something, figure out, like, we know some things, you dumb idiots. All right. Then the other thing is, you're right, though. The players certainly are not going to say anything. If I was playing football and a quarterback and I was walking in on I'm vaccinated, I'm being tested every other week, I'm going in on a day where, I got the sniffles and I don't feel really good. It feels maybe like I got a cold or whatever. I'm not telling anybody. I'm not going to go, hey, I need to take a test. I might have COVID. Like, no player is going to volunteer for that. They're just going to suck it up and go, as long as, like you're talking about, the symptoms aren't so dramatic where you feel like, oh, man, I'm, like, bedridden. I got to go lay down. I'm miserable, which I'm sure there has been cases of that as far as guys in the NFL. But I think anything else other than that, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, the T.J. Watts of the world, if they woke up on game day and felt less than, they're going to go, what? Great. I don't give a damn. I'm playing football today. That's what they feel like they're put on earth for, and there's just no stopping that. Until maybe they change protocols here.
Ben Roethlisberger did tap out and alert the team that he had symptoms. He wasn't feeling well a few weeks ago, and he was praised for that, as he should have been. Now, he also several years ago did that during a game when he was having concussion symptoms. He alerted it, the team to it, and was removed from the game. Not every player has that confidence in his job, though, in his position, in his status to do that. Beyond the fact that you love the sport and you want to play, you don't want to let someone else go out there and show that, hey, that guy's as good as Simms, and we're paying that guy a hell of a lot less.
That's right.
Maybe that guy should be our quarterback instead of Simms. That's part of what drives guys to play conceal symptoms and say, I'm going to be fine. And again, there's no evidence whatsoever that it transmits during games. So I know that it tiptoes toward hot take territory, but one of the reasons I keep saying it is to illustrate how ridiculous it is to test guys once a week. You're testing them a day after a game. You're finding out they're positive a day after a game. Well, they were positive during the game then.
Sure. No, you're right.
So why are we doing that? Why aren't we testing everyone before every game? I just the whole thing seems odd to me. It's flawed, and I think that's the bottom line. This year, I feel like there's a lot of form over substance. There's been indications that they really aren't interested in getting to the bottom of certain things. And they let Aaron Rodgers show up for his press conferences without a mask on, even though it's a clear violation of protocol. And they aren't tracking down fake vaccination cards. I feel like a lot of it is just done for political and PR reasons.
Right.
And it's starting to collapse on them. That's the problem. They need to pivot from the political and the PR reasons for what they're doing into something that is aimed at getting this thing under control and finding a way, the sweet spot between managing the virus, protecting people who need to be protected, but also allowing guys to go out if they're asymptomatic and happen to be positive, to let them go out and play. The current protocol is letting guys every week play who are positive. We just don't know they're positive yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. They gotta figure something out. They do. I mean, I don't know where that sweet spot is. To your point, but I do look at it and go, hey, just as a guy that loves football, we all love football. The NFL, we root for the NFL. We want it to be successful. We want the best product on the field. We know the owners and coaches want that too. And here we are, middle of December, and things are getting dicey. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see some team that, I look at and go, man, they're a playoff football team, and all of a sudden they're not in the playoffs here because they lose the last 2 or 3 games of the year because of COVID and issues of that nature. And then that ruins the playoffs for all of us because now some team that really shouldn't have been in gets in, and now they're down by 40 in the first round. And we go, well, see, this is why the hell we didn't want them in. They shouldn't have been here. That hurts the product on the field. I don't want to then flow over to the playoffs either and have teams not at their best then. Nobody wants to see that, right? I mean, I'm already disappointed that there's no Chris Jones on Thursday night. Chris Jones, Chris Jones is the best player on the field, both teams probably right now. I mean, minus the quarterbacks, and Mahomes isn't on fire as of late anyways. Herbert, we know he's playing good, but, man, that stinks. It's the Chargers, it's the Chiefs. It's a fight for the AFC West. It's positioning in the playoffs. We're not going to have Chris Jones. He's the best defensive player in the game. He's the best player maybe in the whole game, and that's going to be a game changer for the Chiefs, and I don't like that. I want to see these teams at their best.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.